So we begin with Vineet Rai. Vineet is the co-founder and managing director of IntelCap and Avishkar, and is like Lise, commissioner at the Global Commission of Business and Sustainable Development. So if I could request Mr. Rai to please come up. Vineet, do tell us what are some of the biggest opportunities for us to innovate here in India, and most importantly, how do we make sure that it can happen?
Thank you. So let me start by actually saying that the session started with Zenia talking about moonshots. Asking an Indian to speak in 6 minutes about what he has done and what the Commission has done is itself a moonshot. So if I succeed, it would actually at least please John that India has some hope. Let me start by saying that we are living in interesting times, not the Chinese proverb. But if you look at what happened in the last 50 years, the world has seen significant changes. We have not seen ever in our history the amount of wealth that we have created in the last 50 or 100 years that we have created. We have also not seen the amount of people who walked out of poverty in the last 50 years that has ever happened. Unfortunately, while doing so, we have done everything that we shouldn't have done. Inequality has never been as vast as it has been today. It's also actually quite striking that we are a volatile, unsustainable world. And that's where the real challenge was. Now, because we have done something very audacious in the last 50 years, probably United Nations came up with the Sustainable Development Goals, which by any means of, by any stretch of imagination, are extremely audacious. The fact, and as John pointed out, getting rid of poverty and hunger in our last so many thousands of years of history, we have never got rid of these two problems. The remaining 15 are just add-ons to that. Getting rid of hunger and poverty is an impossible dream, was an impossible dream, suddenly made possible. So there is a clear case of exponential thinking. Something that we never thought was possible is being talked as being possible. The challenge is you need $2.5 trillion to do that. Now, if you put together all the ODAs, all the development assistance that is there, that will take care of probably $500 billion. Where would you get the $2 trillion? That means all the 194 governments of the world who signed on that really doesn't have the money for which they committed. And that really is the challenge. So we can think exponentially, but capital does not like thinking exponentially. Why? Because it's risk averse. And that's really the challenge that we are dealt with. So what we did is, under the leadership of some really inspiring leaders from the business world, Paul Pullman, one of them, Mark Malloch Brown, who's not necessarily a business leader, but another inspiring leader, came together to put together a business commission. Lisa and I happen to be members of that commission. 28 of us were tasked with the idea of finding that $2 trillion. We were given a year, and we have come out with a report that some of you quoted about, which got released yesterday in India. It was released actually or launched at the start of this year in Davos, and we have been trying to propagate this. So to those audience who are there, who are looking at from a business, very large business perspective, we believe there's just 4 goals. If you are trying to look at those goals from a business perspective, you can generate $12 trillion of business opportunity if you're looking at the world. And if you're looking only at India, you can generate $1 trillion of business opportunity for yourself. Now, the $2 trillion that we are seeking is just 1% of the $200 trillion that resides in the private domain. And it's quite a significant amount of capital, but not necessarily anything significant if you see from the private domain. So I would call on those who represent billion-dollar, multi-billion, multi-trillion-dollar enterprises, global enterprises, that you read that report simply because it has some probable solutions that could help you expand your business, given that the world is facing some of the biggest challenges about growth itself. And capital, while it does not like really challenging targets, it surely loves small growth. And there is very big growth being presented to you here. For those who are in India and who are actually looking at India itself, we are talking about $1 trillion of opportunity in terms of business. And what we are looking at is $500 billion of capital. The important point is you are able to actually going to address something that we have never been able to address. And India's importance has already been highlighted by John in multiple terms as to why we are very, very important in making a difference. And those who are not here from the billion-dollar industries, but are naive, inexperienced, aspirational entrepreneur who are idealists and want to change the world, I can tell you something about myself. We and some of us actually run something called an impact investment fund, and we are trying to build social entrepreneurial ecosystem that gives you an opportunity to use your naive minds to solve these impossible problems. because unfortunately, wisdom will not allow you to solve the problems of the future. So therefore, the more inexperienced you are, the chances are that you would be able to solve these problems. And we at Avishkar IntelliCap Group are committed to raise around $5 billion over the next 8 years to invest only towards this. Till now, we have roughly invested $500 million in last 16 years in trying to build a number of enterprises that are actually creating jobs, that are trying to make a difference to the lives of the people, reducing vulnerabilities, not necessarily in exponential terms, unfortunately, because we didn't have Genie around. But now that we have XPRIZE, we have multiple theories that could actually be applied, I think the new and audacious minds have a role to play. And I would make sure, along with my partners, 40 or 50 of us in the Indian Impact Investor Council, that there is enough capital to support these ideas that either get supported initially by Xenia Tata or multiple of incubators that are propagating around here in India. John, I can assure you that while you sounded a little desperate about India's inability to actually rise to the occasion, I think you are talking to an India which has just about started realizing its potential, where we are an elephant and we are slow, but we are gaining the strength, and once we start running at the speed of 60 kilometers, the momentum itself will take us far. So I'll stop here. Thank you very much.